and lots to talk about. We're going to be going through the Newcastle versus Liverpool game, and I've literally just finished watching the game, and it was an absolute belter of a game, and so many interesting tactical points came from it in terms of what Jurgen Klopp did, the changes that he made, I thought were absolutely fascinating as well. There were mistakes, I think, from Jurgen Klopp, and there was the right substitution. That was Darwin Núñez, who stepped in and absolutely took the game away from Newcastle. Newcastle fans, I presume you are absolutely shell-shocked right now. Let me know how you're feeling in the comments down below. Let's get straight into this because there's so much to talk about. I mean, first of all, in terms of like the game itself, I think Klopp got this totally wrong in terms of an away game against a Newcastle United side that plays at St James's Park and does what they do. You've got so many techie players, use them. You've got so many techie players, use them. Here, the thing that matters more than anything is battles. It was all about battles, this game, for me personally. And let me explain exactly what I mean when I say that. Because this game, there were some fantastic performances from the Newcastle side, especially in that first half of the game. But for me, the game was massively about control. And when you are a Liverpool side with the tactical quality of Szoboszlai, McAllister, Endo, who I thought was really, really impressive. Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Gakpo, who likes to drop deep as well. Look, let's chuck Diaz in there as well. And yet don't have to worry about Salah either. When you've got all these players and you're coming up against a side like Newcastle, who have one thing that's really important on their side, which is the crowd, control the game. Control the game. Didn't do it. And it came down to battles, actually. Really key battles. And let me circle them for you. This was one. Definitely going to talk about that, I think. I thought Joe Linton and Szoboszlai in that first 20-odd minutes was an important one. Tonali and McAllister. Diaz and Trippier was one to a point. I think, yeah, it was. Salah, who actually drifted quite a lot, so I wouldn't say that. I would say, look, you've got the centre-backs up against that striker. That's going to be a key one as well. This is going to be a crucial one as well, if we talk about it. Let's get rid of it and talk about them kind of one by one. But for me, the main thing, the root to all the problems for Liverpool in this game for 85% of it, or 85 minutes of it, was not controlling the game. But a change happened once the player was sent off, Virgil van Dijk. Let's talk about Alexander-Arnold first and foremost, because I think we have to talk about the fact that should he have been sent off? Look, this is going to be a massive problem here where by the letter of the law, and there's no allowance for common sense. Should he get a booking for the first one? By the letter of the law, yes. And it's almost like the refs have obviously been told to do this. So he's like straight away going, yeah, I can. And then the ref gets himself into a whole world of trouble because obviously that second one occurs where he pushes Anthony Gordon and he should have been booked for that second one. Absolutely should have been booked for that second one. And the big problem I think that Trent had in this game, I actually tweeted once he was booked, I was talking about the idea of maybe swapping Gordon and Almiron, just so that you had someone to sort of go one-on-one against him down this side. Because if anyone's going to make a challenge, then it's obviously going to be Alexander-Arnold and you want him to get that second booking. But I think the thing that was wrong. That was a wrong take from me. And the reason being, Gordon, two things. First of all, Alexander-Arnold, he plays so much more narrow than a normal fullback. So much more narrow than a normal fullback does. And that's becoming a problem for him. Because, honestly, no one wants to be in this position as a right back. The difference between coming up against someone who's going to drive at you here and here is night and day. Because what you have is you have a defender in that touchline. And if you are playing fullback, you can go, okay, look, I'm going to show you down this way. And if you go down there, I'm going to do my very best. If you get a cross in, so be it. We've got bodies in the box. And if you come into this side, I've got Szoboszlai back. I've got Endo back. I've got Salah on his way back. I should be fine. But when you're playing so much more narrow, it just makes life so much harder for yourselves. And that's what was a massive problem for two things. And what I will say is Anthony Gordon was living in Trent's head rent-free for the bulk of this first half. I thought he got himself back together in the second half and did okay. And actually, I felt like Newcastle didn't really focus on that enough. And I'll explain that in just a second, exactly why. Because Liverpool used a very clear tactic in the second half and the first half once they went down to 10 men. But Anthony Gordon was on his mind throughout. And so the goal actually comes from that. Salah plays the ball back to Trent, who's kind of in a narrow position here. And he can see that Gordon is coming straight at him. And he's concerned. And because of that, that's why he has that terrible touch. Allows Gordon to get in. And he scores his goal. Actually, let's give you the shot you deserve. Oh, no, wrong one. Hang on. Whoop-boo. Goal. Get in goal, Becker. Naughty boy. So that's his fault. And then actually, if you watch back the sending off, and again, let's talk about the pairings once again. You know, in terms of people getting the better of each other in those battles, which are always so important. When it comes back to that lack of control on the game, was a real problem here, because actually where the game was played, you had McAllister and Tonali kind of on either side. So Bosley was constantly trying to stop those passes from Guimaraes into him there. So Joelinton was often behind him in those half spaces. So that was a tricky battle for Szoboszlai, who I thought had a really good game in several different roles. Endo, I thought, was shielding pretty well. But Trent Alexander-Arnold, once again, because he's been booked, Gordon gets the ball. Let's give him the ball. Gordon gets the ball. And Alexander-Arnold, he is so scared that he's going to go down this way and just cook him, that he thinks, oh, as long as we go inside, I'm okay, I'm safe. Especially when you're, in line with the 18-yard box, then being 5 yards from the touchline. And so because of that, and because of the fact that he'd been on a booking as well, he lets him ghost past him. There isn't a tenacity there. He's not very dynamic, and he's not assertive in what he's trying to do in terms of stopping Gordon. Because two things, and let's be honest, one is obviously he's on a booking. Two, Gordon goes down easy. Let's be honest. Come on. So he lets him go. And when he lets him go, that obviously allows for Gordon to play that pass into Isaac here. Let me show you. And when he plays that pass, there's been a lot of talk about it, is he the last man? Blah, 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 with Virgil van Dijk. Don't make the challenge. Don't make the challenge. Let's be honest. It's a great pass that cuts through, and he is through on goal. This is a guy he's not going to have a bad touch there. He is through on goal. This isn't like high up the pitch. He's like just outside the penalty box. So it's absolutely a sending off for me. And the thing that I don't understand why that isn't being said enough is you are on the wrong side of him. So focus on that. Use your arm and take him away from goal. Don't just crunch through him. Awful from Virgil van Dijk. That is so unlike him as well. And again, maybe there are those doubts creeping in with some of these guys. Certainly for Alexander-Arnold in terms of allowing him to do that. Endo was having to deal with Joelinton, which was great movement from him to create that space for him. But Virgil van Dijk doesn't need to get involved. He just doesn't need to get involved at all. And I don't know what he was thinking. So it's definitely a sending off. The goal is a disaster. Trent is lucky to be on the pitch in terms of my opinion. And so, of course, they are now down to 10 men. So what happens? And just to finish off in terms of, because this is probably as good as it got for Newcastle. And what Newcastle did really well is they had Gordon, they had Almiron, they got the ball and then came inside. Both of them were happy to do that. And I thought there was some great running from Tonali. There's great running from Joelinton, who have got so much tenacity, and to give them their flowers. That is the big thing about Newcastle. And again, I'm going to say it for the last time, when you've got all these techie players, Liverpool have to control the game away from home and quieten down the crowd. And they didn't do that. They sort of went toe-to-toe with them, and it was poor. I thought Szoboszlai made a few poor passes. I thought Gakpo was really poor. And Trent was honestly in quicksand for the first half of the game, which is, again, not very, very like him. And actually, I think we can probably go. I bet you his passing stats were pretty awful. Let's have a look. Where are you, young man? Reveal yourself. Let's just go passing. Let's go accurate passing. Let's go find Trent. 64%. 64% pass accuracy. Now, I know he tries passes. I get it. But still, not good enough. So what happened once they went down to 10 men. They did what they should have done at the start of the game, which was utilise the players that they had. And importantly, a really smart thing that Jurgen Klopp did. Now, I thought they should have put Núñez on earlier. On reflection, there could have been, the right level of game management here. I'll give him the credit he maybe deserves. Jurgen Klopp knows more than me when it comes to football. So here's what happened. Diaz went off. Gomez came on. And obviously Virgil van Dijk got sent off. Went to a back four. Endo stayed on. And it became, certainly out of possession, JaackMaate came over here. Salah went and played up front. But what they did do, and they started to creep into the game in the sort of last 5 or so, 10 minutes, let's say, of that first half. Because Salah is always a threat in any of these positions. If he gets the ball and he's able to turn, he's going to hurt you, right? Joe Linton's going to want to get on. Naturally, as the game progressed, Joe Linton was so high. Gordon was really, really high as well. Pinning Alexander-Arnold, who's actually... They really didn't utilise... That was the one thing I thought was really disappointing. Utilise that long pass. And actually, Liverpool were the opposite for some time of it. Robertson was trying these long passes, and it didn't work for me. Without the ball, as I say, it was a 4-4-2. But what they started to realise, that with the ball, JaackMaate could come and get involved. Salah could be here. McAllister could be here as well. And when you're defending, in terms of Newcastle's side, these players kind of come out of the game because actually they're focusing on being, being attacking threats. And the game, what they started to figure out was that the game needed to be played here, in the centre of the pitch. And actually, Alisson and Trent said some really revealing things in their post-match. They spoke about mentality. I think their mentality, to a point, has a part to play in here in terms of the growing pains of Newcastle. Alisson spoke about making the pitch smaller. And that's exactly, when he said that, I was like, that's exactly what I saw myself. And the substitutions really helped with that in the second half of the game as well. So those are the two things that I thought were really, really interesting from those post-match. But yeah, in the last few minutes, that's what started to occur. And what they did here was they allowed themselves to have, allow themselves to have basically 5-on-3. Let me just show you that 5-on-3. If I can do it. Yeah, so 5-on-3 in that centre of the pitch. And that means that you can keep the ball when you've got really talented players on the pitch. And they looked to do that. And I thought that was really smart because it meant you weren't getting stretched. You could work up the pitch. You've got dribblers here, you've got dribblers here. But what I thought they weren't doing was hurting the team, hurting the opposition here. So because if you're going to play narrow, you want to play vertical, really. You want to be able to hurt teams in transition quickly. And with Salah patrolling this sort of area, I thought they were missing something. But slowly, as the game progressed, Klopp went for it very, very gently. And I thought it to be fair, it was clever, but I would have liked Núñez on the pitch so much earlier. But what was interesting is that, you kind of take out these guys out of the game once you've got the ball. So Alexander-Arnold didn't really get forward at all. I think we could probably have a quick look at his average positions. This is one hell of a game, so I'm going to go all over the place here, hopefully. But hopefully you're enjoying it, and if you are enjoying it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We've got a massive week. I'm hoping to do a Champions League draw live stream, which could be really awesome. So make sure you subscribe for that, and loads on the channel this week. And as you can see here, kind of narrow, but let's make the substitutions really, really narrow. And what they look to do, and of course you've got 10 men here, is go from what could have been a 4-2-2-2, and because you've only got 10 men, it became a 4-2-2-1. Let's go back to the tactics book, shall we? Okay, so here we are. So as those changes were made, and I won't do it in the right order, I'm sure, but JaackMaate came off, Jota came on, McAllister came off, Elliott came on, Endo came off, I think maybe Quansah came on for someone. It was probably Matip, but let's leave him on here because I don't have him as something. But Núñez, of course, came on as well. And so what happened here was that you had Jota and Salah kind of playing into out. And obviously they could come back and help out if they needed to defensively. But actually Salah kind of just stayed a lot of the time and they worked this way around. Oh. But with the ball, it was so important. But the twos here, you had two really exciting attacking players in Salah and Jota. Elliott and Szoboszlai, as I say, super technical players who can get on the ball, pretty press-proof, can dribble past a player as well. I thought Newcastle made some mistakes in the sense that Tonali needs to stay on the pitch for me. I don't understand why he didn't stay on the pitch. That seemed really odd to me because these two were really pressing. Now, maybe they've worked their socks off and you take them off. But for me, I think they are such dominant workers. You lose a lot of energy when you bring in Longstaff and I can't even remember who the other one was. So Núñez comes on the pitch, and that's the massive difference between Gakpo and Núñez is so simple because when Gakpo's on the ball, Gakpo wants to come this way. And I think the important thing to say, if you haven't seen it, I did a video a couple of weeks ago about Darwin Núñez saying why he will score 20 goals this season. And a lot of you have hammered me for it, understandably so, because he hasn't bloody started football matches. But go and watch that video because football's about profiles, but it's about the right kind of chemistry, and it's also about space. And I think that's where Núñez was so important, and I was surprised that he wasn't on the pitch earlier, because when you get him on, what happens all of a sudden is instead of Botman and Shaw pushing up, allowing these guys to push up, by playing the game in the middle of the pitch, basically between the 18-yard boxes, but then also having someone like Núñez who is willing to stretch the play and also run into these channels, you give yourself a chance, but also you stretch it. You bring Botman back, you bring Shaw back, and if these guys want to come back, then they can, and that means you're further away from goal. But even if you don't, all this space for Jota to hurt teams, all this space for Salah to hurt teams, and actually importantly as well, here for Salah, so much more room. And actually Jota and Salah did a lot of movement around Darwin Núñez, but Darwin Núñez was willing to make those channel runs. And at the end of it all, that's what cost him. Now look, I know Botman got injured and he came off. Burn came in. It's a very different player, but getting Darwin Núñez on the pitch was the game changer. But he did it in whatever minute it was, 71st minute, 75th minute, right? So maybe he was looking to stay in the game until that point. Becker you've got to talk about Becker. 7 big saves, massive save from Almiron as well. And when we're talking about the mentality here, I think that is the one thing, and please don't take this the wrong way, Newcastle fans, because I'm not trying to have a go at Newcastle. And I think the jump from, wow, I can't believe we finished third, to we are pumping teams on the regular is going to take time. And actually, I feel like this Liverpool side reminds me a little bit of that Jurgen Klopp side early doors, where you haven't totally got that control yet. Because I think there was maybe an element of sort of giddiness that, wow, we're in control, wow, we're in a good place here, we're going to win this game against Liverpool, we're pretty comfortable. But if you don't get that second goal, the opposition have always got a chance. I thought Bruno Guimaraes had a really good game. I think you can see from his tackles as well, he was pretty important. 2 key passes in this game. Ground duels won 9 of 15. Aerial duels won 1 of 1. 5 tackles as well. Really important player for the team. And it's one of those where I think you're shell-shocked if you're a Newcastle fan. Like, you have to be, right? But the change, weirdly, the best thing that happened to Liverpool in this game was getting a player sent off. Like, what world are we living in when getting Virgil van Dijk sent off is the best thing that happens to you in a game? Fascinating. So Jurgen Klopp, I think, deserves some criticism because I would have put him on much sooner. I think it would have given you a better chance of drawing the game. Obviously, it all worked out in the end, right? But also, I think, look, making the pitch narrower was crucial. Being able to take that midfield out of the game to a point and utilising what you've got. I think control over games is something that Jurgen Klopp's not really wanting to do a lot of the times. He wants to press high, he wants to get at them, he wants to play in transition. But you played into Newcastle's hands in this one up until that point. So unbelievable that Newcastle have lost this game. Also, I've just got to say, Harvey Elliott, absolutely superb when he came on, I thought. Absolutely superb. Gomez got through the game. Newcastle had a lot of chances. Let's have a quick look at those stats as well, actually. Expected goals 2 to 0.95. They hung in the game. 60% to 40%. They had the ball, but they had the ball in wide areas. Let's have a look at that very quickly before we say goodbye. Because, yeah, you can see that structure's there. And Anthony Gordon was absolutely fantastic in this game. Absolutely fantastic. But with those players, weirdly, the shout of should we swap, should you swap those guys around, actually, probably as the game wore on, that might have been a decent shout to go and do that. Hang on, let's take him off. Because you would have retained that width. And I think there was an element here when we come back to mentality where with the tenacity that this Newcastle side is providing game in, game out, and what the energy of the crowd provides as well, you've got to smell blood and you've got to go and win those games, because that is definitely a couple of, 3 points dropped. To not come out without a single point when a team has played for that long with 10 men is kind of on Eddie Howe. But it's probably on the mentality of the players as well, because they kind of took their foot off the gas, and there was an element there, just a whiff of social loafing. If you don't know what that means, Google it. Guys, love this. I hope you're enjoying this, by the way. I could have used this more, but we'll use that angle in time, okay? Guys, massive week on the channel. Transfer deadline day is on Friday. There's going to be so many videos. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.